Welcome to Think Big for Africa podcast. On this podcast, we will bring you interesting conversations with local, national, and international African leaders from all walks of life, home and abroad. Leaders who are doing their bits to progress Africa's development. Conversation topics will range from education, science, health, leadership, politics, business, and many other global issues. Conversations about everything that concerns Africa's development. Africa has so many wonderful achievers worldwide, and this is exactly what we will bring to you on Think Big for Africa podcast. Stay tuned.
Hello, welcome to the Think Big for Africa podcast. This is Ekene, your host. Today, I have a very good friend, someone I think will be, the discussion with him will be very beneficial to help a lot of young Africans. His name is Wale Osofisan. Wale, how are you?
I'm fine. Thanks, Ekene.
Good.
For inviting me to your
Yeah,
podcast.
so Wale is the senior director for governance technical unit of the International Rescue Community. Right. The reason why I invited Wale to come here is that I've been working with a lot of young Africans for the last 4 years, and a lot of them tend to want to start or have started NGOs, but very few tell me they want to start a business. And through various discussions, I discovered that the reason why most of them want to start NGOs is because they think NGOs get easier funding, okay? Although I don't think so, okay? And I've told them, NGOs, you need to be good at driving funding. Yes, the funding pattern is different from a business, but a good NGO need to have people, directors, who are good at talking to people and laying down their goals and what they want to do and the strategies to people who have the funding and are willing to help them. And at least that's my view. But many times I tend to dissuade them because I used to, the word is used to have that negative view of NGOs, okay? Because I see it as the West coming to Africa and telling us how to do things, okay? That is the famous white savior, okay? I hate that, okay? But in recent times, I've discovered that NGOs can be very, very beneficial to the society. In fact, I myself, for the last 6 years, I've volunteered for one of the biggest NGOs in the UK, okay? Because they helped me, and I in turn decided to help other people that they work with. That's the Stroke Association of the UK, okay? I'm a stroke survivor, and the Stroke Association helped me. And since then, I've been working with them and I'm an ambassador for them. So that's why I invited Wale here today, being a big guy in the charity sector. He knows a lot of things that can help young Africans who are truly interested in starting an NGO. So Wale, now you know why I brought you here.
My pleasure.
So let's start. Well, let's start by you telling my audience who you are and what you do.
Okay. You've introduced me already, Wale Osofisan. I work for the International Rescue Committee. It's an international non-governmental organization. We are based, headquarters based in New York, but with presence in 40 countries in all continents, except Australia and Antarctica, obviously. We are in Asia, Africa, Europe, South America, and North America. And essentially, our mission is to help people caught up in conflict and crisis to survive, recover, and gain control of their future. I lead our global governance programming work. And what this means is that my team supports our country programs to design and implement programs that amplify the voices of people whose lives have been impacted negatively by conflict and crisis. For us, governance programs help them to regain some control over their future by championing their rights to influence the issues and decisions that affect, their cities, their towns, and their communities. Basically, giving them a voice in decision-making processes.
Good. So, Wale, let me make this clear. You are not here to speak about the NGO you work for, okay? So I brought you here as an expert in that sector. You are the highest person I know from Africa who is in that sector. So I brought you here to talk about NGO generally, right? Good. What are the benefits to a society? See, I know this. In the UK, the NGO sector is an equal partner with the government and the private sector. In fact, during this COVID-19 issue, NGO has been very instrumental in the implementation of every government initiative. Okay,
Absolutely.
So tell us what you may list some and explain some more, some very good benefits of NGOs in the community.
Okay, I'll come to that in a minute. But before I do, I think it's very important for us to understand that every society that wants to function effectively need three key sets of institutions to do that.
Okay.
The first one is you need an effective government at all levels, from national to subnational to local levels. So that's your private sector, the state. Sorry, that's your public sector. The state. Now the second is the private sector.
Okay.
Right? An innovative and productive private sector, which creates wealth, in my opinion, and adds economic value.
Yeah.
And, the private sector should also automatically be the main employer of labor, not the public sector.
Okay.
Now, the third set of institutions you need is a strong and robust civil society, which in UK, we kind of lump anything non-government and non-private sector as charity.
Okay.
Which I think it's a mistake. We should think about civil society, not charity, because charity does sound like someone that gives somebody that doesn't have.
Yes. Yes.
You know, it's bigger than that. It's larger than that. So it's, you know, and you can also add to that category, the third category, an independent media, you know,
Okay.
free press.
Okay.
So all these three are vital, right? The public sector sets the policy agenda, you know, the institutional frameworks. It ensures the rule of law is sacrosanct. It protects territorial integrity of the country, while the private sector, in my opinion, is where wealth is actually generated.
Yeah.
And the civil society is the space outside of the family, the private sector, and the state. So basically, all forms of social action carried out by individuals or groups who are neither connected to or managed by the state. So that's, you know, civil society. So, and you know, one way to think about this, you know, is think about the government as the head, you know, the head. Think about the private sector as the heartbeat, right, of the body, and think about civil society as the soul of the nation.
Okay.
Right. So government head, private sector at, civil society the soul. And these are three legs of a three-legged stool. You need those three legs for the stool, you know, to stand in a balanced position. Now, in terms of the benefits, I think the best way to answer that question is to start by recognizing that, you know, charities, NGOs, civil society, whatever we want to call them, but for the sake of this podcast, let's just call them NGOs.
Okay.
These are not monolithic entities. I mean, you gave an example of the Stroke Association, you know, that supported you and you work with now. You support now. That's a single issue organization.
Yes.
Right? They focus on stroke survivors.
Yeah.
And, you know, so in essence, you can categorize NGOs into three basic types of organizations.
Okay.
You know, one is organizations that meet basic needs. You know, so these are NGOs that meet basic needs of the poor, you know, such as provision of food, clothing, you know, and other materials that they need to survive, right?
Okay.
These NGOs are also, you know, known to participate in humanitarian disasters, right?
Okay.
As well. The second category I can think about is NGOs that are service providers, right?
Okay,
Service providers mean that they provide vital services in the areas of healthcare, education, you know, housing, social services, and protection.
Okay.
For people that may need access to that. And the third category is NGOs that focus on empowerment, right?
Okay.
So, you know, they dedicate their work to empowering communities to be aware of things like, you know, their social, political, and economic issues which affect them, and how they can rise against, you know, oppression, against bad governance, you know, against bad decision making that negatively affects them. Right.
Okay.
So you can have those, you know, those three main areas, plus the single issue NGOs.
NGOs.
One single issue. So it's not a monolithic group, right? You
Yes.
know, we need to be very, very clear. Now, you will find that many NGOs focus on all of those three things I mentioned. So, for example, the organization I work for, ILC, we meet people's basic needs. We provide healthcare and education to people in crisis. And we also work with communities and local civil society groups on women's empowerment, as well as women's political participation and participation in the general civic, you know, space. So there is a benefit to society to have very robust functioning civil society organizations, NGOs, right? Because they play a role either to, in some cases, they fill gaps that the state cannot fill in terms of service provision. And I'll give you a practical example. I mean, without INGOs, there will be no healthcare provision in many parts of Eastern Congo, Eastern DRC.
Okay.
Right. So NGOs have, you know, in fairness, faith-based organizations as well. For example, you know, the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
The Catholic Justice and Peace Development Commission in DRC. You know, they run so many clinics in Eastern Congo, you know, where government is absent. Same in South Sudan. right? Without NGOs, many kids in South Sudan will never ever receive or dream of receiving any form of education.
Wow.
Right. So you do have organizations that fill that void, but it's not a sustainable model.
Okay.
Because NGOs don't rely on citizens' taxes, right? NGOs rely on donation from well-meaning individuals or well-meaning governments. Mostly from governments in the West. In the global north, to the global south. So we cannot treat NGOs, those that provide services, as a permanent arrangement to, the gaps that you have in government. Which is why, in my view, there should always be a strong component to hold governments to account for fulfilling their primary duty and function.
Okay.
NGOs and civil society have a role in that. So it's not an either or, right? They can fill in those gaps where they can, but at the same time, recognizing that they're not going to be able to fill those gaps forever, and we need to work with the citizens to get the governments
to do that.
To do their job, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Now, I have this question, but as you are speaking, I'm thinking, maybe I need to modify the question. But let me first read it out to you. I said, okay, how can Africa benefit from charities and still work towards reducing the need to use them? Now, yes, I like you said, we need to work towards reducing the need to use some of them, okay? But yeah, let's go with that.
Well, I mean, so you said the premise of that question suggests that all charities focus on generosity.
Yes.
Right? To the poor. I mean, there's an element of truth in that.
Okay.
But as I mentioned earlier, every functioning society needs a robust civil society, right? So it's not if you're saying that, how can we benefit from civil society in ways that reduces the need for them? I think that's the wrong question.
Yes.
I think the right question is, how do we benefit from civil society to reduce the need for handouts?
Okay, very good.
Right, and I'm with you on that. And again, the way to do that is to ensure that the governments in countries that are depending on handouts are doing their job. Are electing, leaders with a vision, with a developmental mindset, leaders that understand what power means in the scheme of things, right?
Yes.
Leaders that understand that the source of their power is not their natural resources or the number of houses they have in south of France or the number of girlfriends or boyfriends or gigolos, whatever that they have, but the source of their power should be their people. And I always like to use China as an example.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, China 30, 40 years ago was nowhere.
Yeah.
Right? But within that period of time, the Chinese Communist Party, I mean, say whatever you like of their democratic credentials and all that, but let's park that aside. The Chinese Communist Party moved over 300 million people.
More than that. More than
300 million people, from being peasants to middle-class producers and consumers.
Yeah.
And because they realize that the source of the power of the Chinese nation, it's its people.
Yeah.
So this is what African leaders need to understand, right? That the source of your power is not your oil and gas or your copper or your.
Let me cut it there. See, the difference between the leaders of the Chinese Communist Party and most African leaders is that every one of the leaders of the Chinese Communist Party are educated.
Are we saying the leaders? I mean, we once had the
many African leaders are not.
Well, we once had the president in Nigeria, for example, that had a Ph.D.
Yeah. See,
the current vice president.
I use the word most. Okay, I didn't say all. See, in truth, I know we're getting out of the main discussion. In truth, you and I would not like to sit down and interrogate and discuss many issues with a lot of African leaders, because they will be talking politics. They won't be able to talk about the issues because they don't know. See, our leaders, they are good at talking politics, okay? But the issues, when I listen to many African leaders, I'm not talking about the head of states, leaders across the board, okay? Especially political leaders. Many of them, when I hear them on TV, they don't know what they're talking about. Unfortunately, because many of our the electorate of our countries do not know so much, so they can get away with rubbish that they talk.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I mean, so
let's.
It's all related, right?
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, it's not by default that most of the resources that many NGOs spend comes from developed countries, right?
Yes.
So, and there's a reason for that. The failure of leadership in many African countries. So I'll say this: there's a big difference between being educated and being enlightened.
Okay. By the way, being educated is not about going to university. That's not it.
No.
Okay.
No.
So you might not go to university. You don't have a degree. You don't have a master's degree, but you are knowledgeable. You have read books. Okay. Because I know people who didn't go to university, but man, they are sound. There are many. They are sound. Okay.
I mean, for me, education is not the mastery of the facts.
Okay.
It's the ability of the mind to think critically, independently.
Yeah.
I mean, without going too deep into psychoanalyzing our problem in Africa, because we can spend the whole time to do that. I'm just bringing it back to your question on benefits of
yes
NGOs,
so we're talking about how can we take advantage of NGOs without our people becoming so dependent.
Yes. So in my view, what I would say is that for Africa, the type of civil society organizations we should aim to see more of are those that focus on empowerment.
Okay.
Right? Those that amplify the voices and choices of ordinary citizens.
Okay.
Right? And less of civil society organizations
that just come and give
basic needs, because that should be the job of the government to set up the enabling environment for private enterprise to thrive and flourish.
Yeah.
So in essence, the role of civil society is to hold the government to account, hold power holders in society to account. We need those type of civil society organizations at every level, from the local government to the state, to the district, to the region, to the, national level.
Okay.
If I take Nigeria, for example, every time people talk about the government, we always think about the federal government.
Yes.
Or we think about the state government.
Yes.
Without realizing that actually the local government
is the main one you should look at.
Actually, the one you should look at because
Yeah.
they are closer to it. They receive funding.
Yeah.
Right. They are responsible for things like provision of primary education, not secondary, the state is secondary education. So what is the jurisdiction of the local government, right? How do you hold that level to account? Now, people will say that, but the local government chairman is powerless, the state governor controls things. Okay, if that's the case, then the focus should be on the state government. Right? What are you doing with all the revenue you're receiving? That's one part of the equation. The other part of the equation is is known in political science as social contracts.
Yeah.
We don't have meaningful social contracts in many African countries.
Yes.
I mean, Ekene, you and I live in the UK. We pay taxes.
Yeah.
Right. If you are on pay as you earn, you see it in your pay slip every month. It's taken.
Yes.
Off. If you are self-employed, you do your self-assessment.
Taxes every year. Yeah.
So you're paying taxes. And that makes you what? A stakeholder.
Yes.
Right? If the prime minister comes campaigning on my street, I have 1,000,001 things to complain about.
Yeah.
If my MP comes campaigning, I have 1,000,001 things I can talk to him about.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm a stakeholder. Right?
Yes.
Now, the tax to GDP ratio in many African countries is so low. In some, it's as low as 5%.
Yeah, that's true.
What that means is, you have less than 5% of the country contributing to its GDP officially, the official GDP. And you have huge percentage, sometimes as high as 80%, operating in the informal sector, who are paying informal taxes, right? The extortions that happen at that level.
Exactly.
So, because there's no social contract. And I always use this example of Lagos. Can you imagine if a bus driver in Lagos, for argument's sake, let's assume he makes 100,000 naira a month, just for argument's sake. And somehow the Lagos state government can tax that bus driver 25%.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So he pays 25,000 every month in taxes. And then that bus driver will want to know why the roads are bad.
Yes, so
that bus driver will want to know why he doesn't have.
Definitely.
He will want to, he will be wondering, why is the police harassing me on the street?
Exactly.
He's a stakeholder. Where is my money going?
Yeah. See, this is it. Yeah, very correct. Because most of our citizens are not stakeholders in the sense that they don't pay formal taxes where they can flag their receipts. Look at, I paid. Okay, that's why what are they called? The people on motor vehicle, whatever, harasses them. The policeman will harass them all the time, and they don't have anybody to cry to, because they don't pay anything, and they don't know their counselor, they don't know their representative in the house. They don't know all these things because they see the system.
It's not just that they don't know them; they may actually know them, but when they come to the constituency, they dance around them. Let me tell you a story. Some years back, I mean, this was like almost 10 years ago now, in Sierra Leone, we were, working with some local civil society organizations. We're funding them to do, to implement some projects. And on a Friday, we had a workshop, and I was facilitating that workshop. And, around 1:00, one of the staff, with the manager of the organization, came to me and said, "Can we finish early today?" And I'm like, "Why? We have up to 5:00 in the agenda." And they're, "Oh, can we finish like 3?" I'm like, "What's going on? Why should we finish at 3?" he then told me that the president, was coming to town, because we were not in Freetown, we were in another city in Makeni. That the president was coming to Makeni and they need to go and welcome him. And I said, just out of curiosity, when you say you're going to welcome him, what exactly
are you going to do?
So they're going to mobilize the community to line up, at the entrance of the town, to dance for the, you know what we do in Africa, dance with kids waving flags. And I said, okay, so what exactly is the president coming to do in your town? Oh, he's coming to commission a water project, more or less borehole. And at that point time, I looked at the guy and said he should call his team. And they organized. I said, I feel like writing back to London now and pulling our funding from you guys, because what you've just told me now is very, very depressing. And I said to them that I'm speaking to them as an African, not as an organization coming from, but as an African. Why would you, members of civil society,
leave your job,
organize the community to dance for the president for doing his job? What I expect you to do is to question how much money they are spending on that water project.
Exactly.
Whether they've delivered value for money.
Yeah.
That's what civil society should be doing, not
dancing for them.
Dancing for
doing their job.
For doing their job. So you see, there's so many things that we have to change in our mindset. See, another example, again in Sierra Leone, it was the same trip. We were going to a particular village. It was a 40-kilometer journey. And we were of course, we were in an SUV because the roads were bad. It took us 4 hours to get to this community because the roads were so bad. And as we were driving into the community, I saw this mansion on the hill. And I was like, okay, so what's that? And they're like, oh, that house belongs to, the Mr. XYZ. He used to be the former Minister of Education. The man a big man the man a big man And these are, government officials, because I'm working with the ministry, saying this. And I looked at them and I said, I feel sorry for that man, for that so-called man.
Yeah. He coming to this house, he will fly this road.
Yeah, in my mind, I'm like, I think the man is mentally ill. So they said, what do I mean by that? I said, okay, so how much do you think it cost him to build that house?
Yeah.
And they said millions of Sierra Leonean leons, billions of Sierra Leonean leons. I'm like, okay, so we've been driving for 4 hours now to his community because the roads are bad. You've just told me that the nearest secondary school to this community is about 20 kilometers away.
Wow.
The nearest primary health facility is also about 20 kilometers away.
Wow.
And yet, it spent billions of leons building a house. I said, by the way, does he live in that house? They're like, oh no, he lives in Freetown, the capital. So I asked them, think about it, fellows. What normal human being will sink billions building a house that he doesn't live in?
Yeah.
In a community that has no school, that has no primary health center, and the roads are bad. What normal human being does that? And you could see the penny drop. Because to them, they all want to be like that man.
Yes.
So sometimes when we blame leaders in Africa, I think we are being unfair to leaders because these leaders did not drop from sky. They didn't drop from earth.
That's what I say all the time. See, when people are blaming government officials, I tell them, those government officials come from your village. They are like you.
And everybody wants to be like them.
Yes. They are exactly like you. And that's why they are the way they are. And that's why I get a little bit depressed when I say that, because what it tells me is that until our society changes, the people who get into power will continue being exactly like that.
Well, Ekene, you and I are also guilty in a way.
Oh yes.
Because, and what do I mean by that? I used to be very, very critical, but I realized that, when somebody challenged me once and said, the reason why you have nitwits in charge in many African countries is because people like you are in exile.
I have my hand up. I'm guilty. And I've said that several times on this podcast. See, unfortunately, when I was in Africa, when I was in Nigeria, I never voted once. Never. Okay? So it's my fault. And there's so many people like me who never voted once, who thought, well, my own was unfortunately a religious issue back then. Okay? But thankfully, I've learned from it. And that's why I say this. I say this openly because I don't say it because I'm proud. I say it because I want people to know I made a mistake and I don't want other younger people to make that kind of mistake. Okay, I own it. See, now, how can Africa build sustainable civil society sector in conjunction with the public sector and the private sector? Because the truth is that if we want a sustainable civil society, it needs to work along with the policy makers, okay, and the private sector to make it sustainable. Okay,
let me answer that question by taking this a little bit upstream.
Okay.
Macro, just to paint a picture and a framework. We live in a hyper global society, hyper capitalist society,
okay,
right? So we talk about globalization. One of the biggest challenges the world faces today is the growing gap between those that have and those that don't have.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So as you can see, I mean, and this is not just a problem, in the global south.
No.
It's also a problem even here in Britain, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the whole Brexit thing was, inequalities. The voting Trump in 5 years, was also that. There's a challenge that we face in, this hyper global capitalist world where there are few winners and so many losers.
Yeah.
We need to think about how do we reduce, this is the challenge, the central challenge the world faces, in my view. How do we reduce inequalities, not just within countries, but also between.
Okay, very good. Very good.
Because when you look at issues of migration, refugee crisis, economic migrant crisis, that's what is driving that. Nobody wants to leave their country.
No.
They're born. They are leaving because of the economic conditions.
Yeah.
Themselves in, right? So that's the key challenge. Now, if you think about that, it's also in the interest of capitalists, of those that have benefited from globalization, for them to narrow that gap.
Wow.
Because we're getting to a point, because we're getting to an inflection point where, even their own wealth is no longer secure and safe. Right? And this is where civil society comes in again. We need to think about what civil society, their role in society, not as, being generous and, helping the needy. That's a little, that's some part of it.
Yes.
The key thing is for civil society to work in partnership with the private sector and with the government to find ways of redistributing wealth as equitable as possible and making sure that basic things in life are available to everyone: food, clothing, shelter, basic education, access to good quality healthcare. If COVID has taught us anything at all, it is that if there's an epidemic millions of miles away, thousands of miles away, you in the rich Western country, you are not safe.
It's going to affect you. Yeah.
So it's in your interest for global public health to work for everybody.
Everybody. Yeah.
Last man and last woman.
I see. I agree totally. I agree totally. But see, unfortunately, some people in society haven't gotten that information into their head. People who have think they will continue having, and their wealth is protected by one law or the other, or their gun or their police, whatever. See, when it comes to health, okay, I will use myself as an example. Everything was perfect, okay, but it took a minute for everything to go downhill. Everything was perfect, work, family, this, that. In a minute, I just fell down. I had a stroke and everything changed. Now, I used to be, once upon a time, I was all about American capitalism. Unfortunately, today, I question a lot of the tenets of the hyper American capitalism today, because unfortunately, it had to take me, my current situation had to happen for me to start thinking beyond myself. Unfortunate, but that is true. That is the truth. See, and somehow most people who are in the have sector are waiting for things to happen to them for them to start thinking beyond that. Okay, today, in the last year, I've been on Facebook. I normally go to American newspaper posts, and I like to read comments. See, most,
I mean, you have to be careful with those things, because you just run mad with the
see, I the comments, I see people fighting for things that are against them. Because I engage people, I talk to them, back and forth, and then I ask them what they do, and I see that this person who is fighting not to have free healthcare in America because he thinks they must not have things free. You are not having things free. You pay your taxes, but they don't get it. They don't get it, and I say, wow, how can this happen? But it's been a long time. See, unfortunately, I would say this: many of us are totally indoctrinated by the myths and propaganda by our governments, unfortunately. And many of us do not think. Very few of us actually sit down and actually question why things are like the way they are.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's something we call enlightened self-interest, which many people don't grasp that concept. I mean, if you look at the Kennedys, the Fords, the Makotos, the Rockefellers,
yeah,
I mean, people are all very wealthy businessmen, but they they have very successful foundations now.
Yeah.
You know, the men that, because unfortunately they were all men, the men that started all those businesses, the brand names today, they're still there. Ford, Carnegie, Makoto, Rockefeller. They are funding a lot of civil society organizations all over the world. Sending kids to school, helping with healthcare. And when these businessmen were making money, they realized that the only way they can sustain their wealth to have a population that was educated and healthy.
Yes, that can afford to buy their products. That is it.
So they invested in all that, right? The sad part to American, you're talking about the US. The unfortunate thing about the American education system is that it's so mechanical, right? There are very few exceptionally good schools in America, no doubt about it. And
that are free, that are government schools.
Oh, extremely few. Yeah. Extremely few of them. Most of them are private.
Private, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's only the elites that can afford to send their kids there. And frankly, even in the UK, to a certain extent, I remember when Brexit happened. I had lived there for 13, 14 years then, and it was a shock to me because I just couldn't imagine, that people will vote that way.
Yeah,
and I decided to start reading, the Daily Mail, the Sun. I started talking to people outside my cycle because I realized that I've lived there for so long, but I was living in a bubble.
Yes,
right?
all of us.
I came to the UK, went to a very good university of like-minded people.
Mm-hmm.
All my friends are from the university. I started working for an INGO, internationalist, like-minded people. So I kind of assumed that was the country.
Everybody like that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Then I started reading the Daily Mail. I started talking to, Joe Public, and I realized that, oh my goodness,
yeah,
I've been living in a bubble.
Yeah.
And it completely changed, my worldview of the country.
I realized that when I started during that Brexit thing, when I started going to a local pub, because I'm always at home because of my injury. So I decided to start going to the pub to watch the games. Right?
Yeah.
Just before the Brexit vote. And one day, one of the people sitting down close to me, because I was there alone, they were talking. And I heard them. They were talking about me. Okay. And I engaged them. What they thought is that this guy, he just came. Look at him. He's injured. They're sure their government is
benefits.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
See, so I now realized, oh my God, this is how they see somebody who in their mind is different from them. And because of his condition or whatever, they assume that this person hasn't done anything to deserve help from the government. And that's why they will vote for Brexit. But I didn't know that the population that think like this was so huge until the day after the vote, when I realized, oh my God. Unfortunately.
So I can't, if I start stories, right, of things that have happened, we will not live here today.
Yeah.
But you see, the thing is, going back to civil society NGOs in Africa, I don't belong to the school of thought that says we don't need NGOs. Right.
Right now, I'm trying to change my thoughts in that direction. Yeah.
What we should discourage, because you started by saying a lot of young Africans you speak to, they want to set up NGOs and all that. I mean, a lot of them want to do that because they can't find a job, right?
Yes.
So they want to do their own thing. I mean, and it's not easy for them to start a business because they don't have the capital, to do that. Although, we've had people that have been very innovative and creative and, started with very little and they're somewhere today. But parking that aside, what I would discourage is people that want to set up NGOs thinking that it's a source of easy money.
Yes.
Right.
And that's the next thing I wanted to ask you. How can people see? I want them to understand that NGO is not the source of easy money. Okay, it's not easy money. So, what are the sustainable mode of funding an NGO?
So, okay, right now, most organizations receive their funding either through what we call institutional donors, right, which are governments, like, for example, the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office.
Okay.
It used to be called, DFID in the past, Department for International Development, but since they merged DFID with FCO, it's now called FCDO. USAID. That's the U.S. Agency for International Development.
Yeah.
You have Sweden, Sweden International Development Agency. So you have a lot of them like that. The Japan has its own, Finland has its own, Denmark. So those are what we call institutional donors because they're governments, right?
Yeah. You
also have private foundations.
Yeah.
The Ford Foundations, the Rockefeller Foundations, the Dangote Foundations. The Mo Ibrahim Foundation, in Africa as well. And you have corporates. So you have companies that have foundations that fund civil society. Yeah. So Citibank, for example, there's a Citi Foundation. There's Oanda, the petroleum company in Nigeria, the downstream company. They have Oanda Foundation. So and you also have individual givings as well. Right. Yeah. So you can set up a website where, this is what, you can, so for example, set up a website and run orphanages, please contribute, and people just, click
give
on
the
money and give money. So individual givers as well. So there are so many ways to raise money, but it's not easy work. It's not easy work because if you are going to go for funding from institutional donors, remember, the USAIDs, the FCDOs are spending US and British taxpayers' money.
Exactly.
So they have to account for it, which means there's a lot of hurdles.
Yeah.
You have to cross.
People work.
There's what you call compliance, there's risk management, there are due diligences that need to happen. Then you have to write a proposal, and that's not the easiest thing to do.
Yeah.
Right? And even assume that you get the grants, you get the funding, you have to deliver the outcomes.
Yeah. Because they will ask you, you have to give them accounts.
Exactly. So it's not, easy money as some people might think it is.
Yeah.
It's not. The NGO sector has become corporate as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not, that's my advice. I won't discourage anyone from doing it, but you have to have a passion for it.
Yeah.
If your passion is you want to make money, you're in the wrong business.
Yes. Because NGO is not about making money.
It's not
if you want to make money, start a business.
No, don't get me wrong. There are some people that have been very, very astute in doing this. So, for example, right? What stops me? I've been in this sector for over 20 years.
Okay.
What stops me from, leaving ILC, setting up my own NGO? I know what donors fund. I know how to write proposals. I know all the risk management, hoops. I know how to implement projects, and I can write proposals, get the money, and do as I like. But you can end up in jail.
Yes.
Because the people giving you money have very, very strong institutions.
Yeah.
And hold you to account. right? And you have a contract with them. So if there's any, they can take you to court. They can ruin you. So people should be very careful. It's not, if you're going to run an NGO, yes, of course, you'll have your administration fee, which means that you have to pay your staff, you have to pay yourself, you have to pay your rent and all that. I'll tell you a story. Years ago, I was in Jos, in Plateau State, in Nigeria, and we're looking for a local partner. So, and we knew nobody. I just went and I was snowballing. And I came across this young man's organization. And I said, okay, we're going to partner with you. And for a month, we worked together to develop the project proposal. The largest amount of money his organization had received in grants was about $30,000, right? And here we're going to offer him about $350,000.
Wow.
For the project. And I didn't know him, but I just felt that, he was very, very enthusiastic and all that. Anyway, to come and story short, when we finished, he said he wanted to take me out, on the last night, we had done the proposal, we had submitted it, and, took me out. And he was like, he believes it was God that sent me to him, because there was no recommendation. I just walked into his office and that was it. And that he's happy, to reward me if we win the grant, that is ready to do more than 10%. I was quite disappointed though, that, and I said to him that, the best gift you can give me, if we win this grant, the best gift you can give me is to deliver the outcomes that we've written into those grants. If you deliver the outcomes, how much are we giving you? 300 and something thousand? Okay. If you win those, I can go back to the donors to say, we want to continue working with this fellow, let's give him $1 million. After 5 years, you deliver that $1 million, you can get 5 million, right? Look at the big picture. Think about the long game. Now you have 300,000, you want to steal the whole 300,000?
Yeah.
Why not? And the irony is, in that 300,000, we're going to pay his rent.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to buy 2 vehicles. We're going to hire more staff. So all your overhead is already covered. We've increased salaries.
Yes. So why do you want to steal money?
Instead of thinking of, let me deliver this so I can get larger grants.
Yeah.
I can get a bigger office. I can employ more people.
The point is this. One, he is not actually interested in delivering. He saw NGOs as a way of making money for himself.
Or probably he also thought, this Nigerian Oga, I need to give him something.
Maybe.
After the meeting, he looked at me and he said, wow, I've never met a Nigerian like you. I'm like, well, there are many of us, I believe.
Like this, yeah.
Like this. And, I had to counsel him that, look at the big picture. Look at the big picture. And that's the thing that we lack. The sense of delayed gratification is missing. We want it now. Now.
And in truth, many of our people do not, they see every career as making money. They don't see career as creating and building a legacy.
Yes.
They see the only thing that flashes in their mind is wealth.
No, but it's not even wealth. That's not wealth. What they think about is what you call, there's a difference between being wealthy and being rich.
Okay.
Right? So we live in a very, very materialistic society.
World, yes.
And this is not just an African thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's a global thing, And then you begin to, what's the essence of living? If the essence of living to me is not living the world a better place than you met it, not just for you and your immediate family, that's very important, but for the wider society.
Well,
and I think you fail.
Many people do not think that way. Unfortunate. And I will say this: most of this pattern of thinking comes from that extreme capitalism. See, there's nothing wrong in making money. Okay, there is nothing wrong in making money, but there is a lot wrong when you always want to maximize your wealth all the time without thinking about how to give to society, to your customer. Tell me, knowing what you know today and the way you see civil society, what it can do for the larger African society. What is your vision for Africa in 20, 30 years? If we actually build this society as a third wheel, working in conjunction with the public sector and private sector to build Africa?
It's a very simple answer, right? I want a civil society that holds to account power holders, both in the public and the private sector. I want a civil society that speaks up on behalf of those without power, right? Because there's power in numbers.
Yeah.
There's power in organization, which civil societies do, and there's power in collective action. And civil society can do that. They can organize, they have the numbers, and they can take collective action. That's what I want to see. As I said, before, we need to think about, there's a saying that, no tax, no representation, right?
Yeah.
And, civil society too should also think about how they can support the society to build a social contract.
Yeah.
Between the state and the citizens. There needs to be a marriage there. Right now, there's none, right? So we see the government as, oh, that's them and us. No, we're the government.
Yeah.
Yeah, the government. It's your money. Nothing should be free. You're paying for it. And, we know from evidence that states that depend on its people through a fair, progressive tax system tend to be more accountable and responsive to the needs of the people than states that depend on their natural resources or overseas development assistance. I mean, I had a friend, he's late now, Professor Tandika Nkadiwere. He was a Malawian professor at LSE, and he was telling me a story that he had a meeting with the Minister of Finance in Malawi, and the meeting was delayed. And when the minister eventually turned up, he was just curious, and he asked him that, how do you spend your time? And the minister said he spends his time, 80% of his time, attending to the needs of donors, as foreign embassies, and 20% of his time on Malawian people.
Wow.
Why? Because 80% of the money that Malawi spends comes from donors. So it's not accountable to donors than its own people.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
So,
Wow.
There you go.
Well, guys, Wale has been very, very beneficial to all of us. I mean, he has helped us to understand the roles of NGOs, civil society in our communities. So if you guys want to build an NGO to help your community, well, this is the time. But make sure you actually want to deliver services or value to your, in quotes, customers. And see, getting funding, like Wale said, it's not, funding is not free. Okay. So anyone who wants to build an NGO should not be here just because he or she thinks you can get funding for free. Nothing is free. And the process of getting funding is actually a good opportunity for you to learn how to present, how to write proposals, how to do things. So actually building an NGO will actually help you build character, build something of value in yourself and in your community. Wale, thank you very much for being here today.
My pleasure. And thank you for speaking directly to African youth.
Yes.
And encouraging them to do the right things.
Thank you. Thank you again.